All right, so moving on to the next panel. Everybody who kept track has seen amazing speakers, 50% of which were women. And Helmholtz is very, very dedicated to promote careers on all levels for female scientists, especially in the field of information and data sciences. And there has been significant progress in the last years of women utilizing our great programs. But unfortunately, there are still significantly fewer women in the field than there are men. I don't really know why, because I know how capable they are. My wife herself, she's doing computational RNA sciences way over my head. So I know that there's that this is not the problem, but we decided that we would include into the program a very dedicated session to introduce the career opportunities and specific career tracks by very, very distinguished female scientists from the Helmholtz programs to you. I encourage all the men to stay tuned. Maybe you learned something. And well, actually, I was asked to leave the stage and hand over to my colleague Alex. I would love to welcome to the studio at the moment. Alex is, hi Alex,
Hello.
great to have you with us.
I
will leave this panel to you. Alex is a very good friend, a colleague of ours from the Helmholtz International Department, and very, very grateful that you take over this session.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
Welcome to the Helmholtz Information and Data Science Academy. We have 350 people online, and the stage is all yours. And
Thank you so much.
On the sidelines.
Thank you. Great to see everyone. Great to see that there's so much interest in this session. So as Andreas already said, I'm Alexandra Rosenbach. My day job is International Relations Manager at the Helmholtz head office. It's a pleasure for me to host the session today on women in data science. And I would like to thank my colleagues at HIDA for inviting me to do this today. And I'm very honored that we are joined by three renowned, excellent scientists. So give a warm virtual welcome, please, to Professor Sabine Attinger from the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research.
Hello.
Professor Alice McHardy from the Helmholtz Center for Infection Research. And we are also joined by Dr. Julia Hoxha, who's CEO of Zena Technologies. And before we dive into the very interesting discussion that we will surely have today, I would briefly like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves with a 100-second pitch each to tell you a little bit more about their backgrounds and the exciting research that they are doing. So I would like to invite Professor Attinger to go first, please.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Sabine Attinger. I'm 55 years old. I studied physics in Bochum and Heidelberg, and then for my postdoctoral time, I went to the ETH in Zurich. During that time, I got also my first child, and then beginning of 2004, I left Zurich and I went to the Helmholtz Center of Environmental Research in Leipzig. And also in the beginning of that time, I got my second child, a son. And nowadays, my kids are 19 and 17 years old. And also my husband is in science. And all the time, we try to share all our family work, so to say, equally. But now coming to my scientific life. So what do? I have built up from scratch a modeling and monitoring unit at the U of Z. And this is a unit that develops large model lines, and these models, computational models, and these models try to predict as good as possible impact of climate change, but also impact of hydrometeorological extremes. And one of these models you may know already. So in the news, when we had these dry years, you saw these colorful maps on droughts, for example. So this is one of my products. And yes, these models produce a lot of data. So analysis and processing of data is also my job. And this is my connection to data science. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Attinger, also for sharing already some personal information. And I would now like to continue with Professor McHardy. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alice McHardy. I'm head of the Department for Computational Biology of Infection Research at the HZI. I'm 44 years old. I started out studying biochemistry, and at some point I realized that this is not for me. So it's too experimental. And I was thinking, what can I do with this degree? How can I combine it with something else? And then I thought a nice angle might be something computational and theoretical. And I thought, oh, maybe that's for guys. And then I thought, oh no, I actually don't know anything about it. And that's when I started thinking about it and starting getting into it. And so I did my PhD in applied bioinformatics. I then went to New York to the IBM TJ Watson Research Center to a bioinformatics lab. I then got a junior research group at the Max Planck Institute for Computer Science and became, with 33, a full professor for computer science in the University of Düsseldorf. And after that, I moved to HZI. So women can do computational sciences, as you probably all know, and you just have to believe that you can do it. And if you have fun, then continue. And so nowadays, we're using a lot of data to answer questions, developing methods and algorithms, for instance, for in silico design of vaccines and analyzing microbiome data sets.
Thank you, Professor McHardy, also for already sharing an inspirational message with our audience. Great. And now finally, I would like to ask Dr. Hoxha to briefly introduce yourself. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Pleasure and an honor. Yeah, okay. Thank you for having me here. It's absolutely a pleasure and also an honor to be in this panel. My connection to data science, or let's say science in general, started quite at an early stage, that I was particularly fascinated and drawn to sciences in general, physics, math. And when I was exposed to software engineering and computer programming later in the studies, I was absolutely at the first moment drawn to that and very attracted, because it made me realize that this is a tool and an instrument that gives us limitless opportunity to build and to create things. And particularly data, working with data to understand the system, the world better, and to extract knowledge out of it. This is something that I've found of particular interest in my studies. And also feeding this data to the machines in order to help them make decisions that augment human intelligence. And this has been projected, so this fascination and this technology as a tool to create things has been projected also in my motivation to bring this near to the people, to make an impact, a direct impact in the society. And how have I at least tried and strived to do that? At an early stage, I created my own, the first company in the entrepreneurial world to bring software solutions to the private field, to the industry, to the ministries and different governmental institutions. I co-founded an NGO in order to dive data, especially governmental data, and get knowledge out of it in order to have open and transparent data. And then later on, I focused my studies in AI and machine learning, particularly in medical informatics. And I was at the Columbia University in my postdoc research for 2 years to study especially patient recruitment in clinical trials. And to conclude, especially why I want to make and why I strive to make an impact through technology, it has also been the motivation for founding the startup Zana 3 years ago, in which with a very bright team, we are committed to use AI, to use patient-centric solutions in order to innovate healthcare and to improve the quality of care through patient-centric app based on voice and chatbot technologies.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hoxha, for that introduction. So, dear audience members, as you can see, we have 3 very accomplished researchers in our panel today with different career paths and different focal points in their research. So this should be an interesting and exciting discussion today. I would, of course, like to invite you to share your questions on an ongoing basis in the chat. My colleague Victoria is here to monitor the chat, so we will definitely try to accommodate as many questions as we can in the discussion. Now, to start off the discussion, I would like to ask a general question to our 3 panelists. I mean, data science is, of course, a very broad term, as we also heard when listening to your individual career paths. It's It's obviously applied in many different disciplines, and it's a cross-cutting topic, so to say. But if you look at STEM or computer and data science in general, it is, of course, still a very much male-dominated field all over the world. So why do you think there are still so few female data scientists in comparison? And what could and should be done to increase this on a policy level, especially? Maybe Professor Attinger, you have some opinions on that you would like to share with us?
Yeah. So I think it is also a perception that is perhaps not, the perception of being a data scientist needs to be changed, I think. And I think the picture that people have is now that the woman is probably not the appropriate one or not a fitting one. So very, very often it is considered to be a little bit nerdy, sitting in dark rooms or cellars and programming and coding. And this is really not the case. I think it's a lot about teamwork, and it's very creative and really establishing code, testing code, looking at data in a team in order to extract knowledge and information. And it's a really exciting job and an exciting task doing that works only in a team. And I think that should be better communicated, since such an environment is very important for women.
Thank you very much, Professor Attinger. So perhaps it's also a question of better PR and marketing, you could say. Professor McHardy, what do you think about this complex question?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. There is at the moment this perception, even though at some point there were a lot of female programmers in the early days of computing. But I think so role models are important, and we see more women being exposed, and that's hopefully going to make a difference. And then, of course, like getting people in touch with it early on, so having that in schools would probably be helpful.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Thank you very much. And finally, Dr. Hoxha, do you have some ideas or some creative advice to tackle this issue?
Well, maybe before starting with the advice, I would also like to recognize that this underrepresentation is, of course, apparent in the data science in general, in women studying at school and also in the early career. What I also find even more concerning is the underrepresentation at later career stages when they're reaching for senior position, for leading and decision-making positions and getting promotions. Because this is also like a a vicious cycle. Once you don't have these role models that guide teams, or they are less represented, and then of course this also propagates at the lower and the earlier stages. And why? And this is the case because I'm also taking an angle here from the tech and the startup ecosystem, which is also very important to bring data sciences and innovation into a practical and pragmatic solution. We have the case that women are underrepresented, and there are very, very few female founders in tech, in science in general, in tech startups. And we had a study with the German AI Association. It's for German ecosystem in general is less than 15%, and for artificial intelligence, it's even less than 10%. And so while trying to give advice, we also have to understand causes. In general, I would like to outline two, maybe to take 2 minutes here. The first one is, we want it or not, is an unconscious bias. And this is proved by evidence. Maybe we don't see it directly reflected into reaction that we get from people, be it in the classroom at the early stage on what is expected in their performance of young women, young girls, or in their abilities, as also the previous panelist stated, but also later on when we want to get promotion, when we want to reach for investment. So there is this unconscious bias because most of the people taking decisions are not female represented. And of course, this plays a role. And the solution to that, or my advice to that, of course, would be a better representation and committed instruments such as incubators, government initiatives, private initiatives that are more represented by women, which also make this decision for promotions, for leading positions. And the second aspect is that mostly in these stages, when they are reaching for such positions and becoming role models for the younger ones, women are generally at an age that they are expected or they want to create family. And we still have societies where women are the main, let's say, or big responsibility for family and for childbearing and taking care of child. And in this perspective, it is an impediment and it is a barrier for these women to take risks and to take initiatives. So what would be my advice or my wish and my solution to that is more, of course, better incentives and better instruments for childcare, for availability of childcare, but also flexibility and financial support, because this then propagates to allowing them more opportunities, as I said, to take initiatives and to become these role models that we want to change in the bias.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hoxha. There was a lot of very important points that you touched upon there. Thank you so much. I already heard that we have quite a few questions in the chat. So Victoria, would you like to point one out to our panel?
Yeah, thank you. We have one question from Karina, and this question is directed to Alice McHardy. And Karina is asking how complicated it is to jump from the experimental side of biology to the computational side in terms of finding opportunities. Alice McHardy.
I think nowadays, so there's so many opportunities and so many open positions. So I think if you have a certain interest and you are willing to just sit down and try new things and learn, then it should be rather easy. So trust yourself and try. And how far theoretically you will go, of course, will depend also on your interest. But there's a broad range of how far you can move to theory from practice.
Great, thank you. Then we have other question going in the same direction. There are questions about how you were tackling situations where your lab members or your colleagues were all being men, and they were not, your expertise was not given or taken seriously. If you can share some thoughts on that or some guidance.
I haven't really experienced that. So I found my colleagues usually, maybe that's also something for the computer science field, like people tend to be rather nice. It's my experience. So I did not really, I mean, if everybody has different expertises, and of course, you're not the expert in everything and nobody else is, in particular if you're getting in advanced topics. So if just learning from your colleagues on certain topics, and that's like a very usual situation in science.
Yes, please, Dr. Hoxha, go ahead.
Yes, what I'd like to add is that I've, from my personal experience, continuously been in environment that were male-dominated in the academia, but also in the industry, as I also said, in the tech startup world. And to be honest, I felt very comfortable. I think what helps is that we position ourselves and we know how to defend our opinion and how to show the expertise, also not being hesitant to show it. I haven't had problems with acceptance of that expertise or that it was doubt. Maybe on a personal note, I could mention only one case where I was told, but that was not in the academia, let your male partner present to a group of clients because there will be only males in the presentation. And what I did, I talked openly to that partner and I discussed the position, and I I stated that I am in the perfect situation to defend this because the whole technology is based on my research, on my PhD. So I am in a very good position to make this presentation. So it was, of course, a more of a, let's say, gender bias that was introduced, but by talking, as I said, openly, being honest, and then knowing how to defend your position and to transmit that expertise without hesitation.
Thank you very much for sharing this personal experience and also giving some advice on how to tackle a situation like that. Professor Attinger, do you also have an example or an opinion on this question?
I share the same experience. So it was always very rational, so to say, and yeah, it was very open to tackle problems in teams, and it was not depending on being female or male. It was a little bit different sometimes in physics, but also there not so much. So no, I think the same as Professor Hardy said, trust yourself, and that will work.
All right, thank you very much. Now let's have a look at one of the other questions that we prepared for this session. So looking at your individual career paths and your personal experiences, what would you say was the biggest challenge so far that you had to overcome, and how did you tackle it? Especially being a woman in a slightly male-dominated field, if you will. So maybe Professor McHardy, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very common challenge, not to our field, but I think really when you have a child, like it becomes just much more complicated to accommodate this family life and those private demands on your time with a career ones, especially in science, where you have conferences around the world, a lot of travel, even though now with the Zoom conferences, it's a bit different. But still, and I think that's really a big challenge to science, not only to data science, of course. And I'm trying to voice this and to get people to consider that this work-life balance is also something that the employer should consider. It's not just your private business of making this work, but the employer should support this, ideally in a flexible way. And I think this will make a lot of progress or help a lot with bringing more women long-term into science if we get that compatibility, if we get that further.
Yes, thank you for that. That's definitely a very important point and something where the employers should take note that there's still some room for improvement there. What is your personal experience regarding this question, Professor Attinger?
Yeah, it goes also along these lines. It's sometimes difficult to find a good balance between family life and the professional life. And sometimes it's very demanding, and probably sometimes I demand too much from myself. And yeah, to handle that, so my motto is I do my best, but not more. And yeah, that helps me.
Thank you for that. And Julia Hoxha, what would you say? What's the biggest challenge? You're a CEO, of course. You founded your own company. How did that go for you? And how did you tackle the hurdles that you encountered? Maybe also giving some advice to our audience.
There were certainly, and there are certainly challenges, of course, juggling and balancing it with family and two young children is not easy. Especially when you take these initiatives and you found and you create also something from scratch. One of the challenges that I found that I would pinpoint, and maybe this also projects in different positions, not necessarily in managing a company or a team, is that the change from a position where you're mostly responsible for your own work, your own tasks, such as in the academia, or maybe having a position where you have a certain, let's say, restricted set of tasks and doing your own research, and then going to another position, to another field where you have to take responsibility also for other people, for a whole team. And beside that, because you have to lead them, you need to put different hats. And so the challenge is also to have, or how to gain this expertise and the capabilities in so many different fields. And what has helped me a lot, and while now reflecting on it, because maybe this has just been very spontaneous and as like inertia and coming out automatic to me when I was doing that and dealing with that. But when I reflect back, what I could say is that I wasn't hesitating to get for support, to get for mentorship. When I was dealing with, let's say, a complicated financial projection or a marketing strategy, then I wouldn't never hesitate to go and grab and ask for mentorship, ask for support, gain expertise in that respect. And another highlight is I see it as pieces of a puzzle that are different, but then you want to put together while staying true to the vision that you have ahead. And this will help me to kind of put that path ahead and look at that path while also putting these pieces of the puzzle together.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hoxha, for that nice metaphor also. Victoria said that there were some new questions in the chat, so let's hear what our audience has to say and what they're interested in hearing.
Yeah, we have another question from Tai Jana Aishi, and she's asking and writing, I'm a bit fascinated with the power and impact of data science. What would be your advice to a young girl continuing bachelor's degree in accounting? What could be the way to build a career in both sectors?
Who would like to take that question?
So is she pointing out a career in both sectors or a career that basically intersects the accounting and the data science, if I understand this correctly?
I think the latter, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, if I may start, I think this is a powerful combination, being able to have a technical expertise, especially when dealing with data science, and then reflecting or using that expertise in a related field. I think this is, of course, an added value. So this would only bring benefits because on one side, let's say in accounting, you understand what is the problem at hand, you understand the principles and the strategy, and on the other side, as a data scientist, you have the capabilities and the technical skills to basically exploit the data related. And I am quite confident that there are many, let's say, for example, in the industry part, but I'm sure also in the research perspective, there are quite some positions and a lot of companies that are looking precisely at this interdisciplinary approach that brings the added value of both worlds. That would be my take on it.
Thank you very much. Professor Attinger or Professor Hardy, do you have anything to add to that?
Perhaps only that I wouldn't specialize too early. So I would like to, I think I would choose a basic or fundamental education first, and then specialize later on particular applications or application fields. But difficult to give advice now from distance, because it's difficult to see your exact question for me.
Yes, I agree. So in the end, if you have just some interest in this, maybe it's a good idea to explore, and then you will see where this will take you. It's oftentimes a bit hard to plan in advance anyway. So when you see a good opportunity arising, and then this is where you will go. So if it's of interest to you, try it out and then make an informed decision.
That's a very good final piece of advice indeed for our audience. Thank you so much. There is another question in the chat. Victoria?
Yeah, exactly. We got another question, and the question is, when a woman is looking for a position, should we consider that the company provides benefits for supporting working mothers? Is this something where you were thinking about when you were choosing your positions, or what do you think?
I can perhaps start. I didn't do it, but I think it's definitely a good way to consider that, because in the end, it's, if you decide for a family and for kids, it's always a double effort, having a family life and a professional life, and whatever helps to make it easier is perfect. And if the company or the research institutions helps with that and has an awareness and an attitude to help, it's very valuable. Yes, do it.
Anything to add from Professor Attinger or Dr. Hoxha?
So I can say that I think if you are looking for a new job, then this is also the right time to bring it up with the employer, because potentially you can negotiate things where you will have later on a bit more difficult stance, right? So if you have several jobs as an option, and you can bring this up as a topic, and then you have it maybe in a written form that there will be some kind of support, this could surely be nice later on.
Thank you very much. So we are almost at the end of our session now. I don't think we have anything in the chat to add to the discussion at the moment.
Here they're coming up some more general questions, also in the direction of you could give women special advice if they want to proceed a career in science, but also want to have children. And the question, when is the right time to specialize? You can choose.
Okay, starting first with the first one. I think what is very important, if not only if you choose science, but in general, that you look for the things you really feel passion for. So in my case, for example, I started studying medicine first, and then during my studies, I realized it's not exactly what I'm burning for. And then accidentally I met some physicists, and then I became aware of, well, it's probably physics. And I didn't realize it before, because physics was the subject I was denying right from the beginning in school when it was possible. So I didn't have any physics in school because teachers was bad, blah, blah, blah. So experience was not good in physics. But then later I realized this is my thing, and then I did it. So look really what the subject you are feeling passion for, and then many things are possible. So this is really an advice I have.
Yeah. I could also only agree with that. And what I would also add to reinforce, I also had the similar experience. I started to study economics, and then I was drawn to computer science. And once you really like it and you love it, so there is no compromise in that. And then you just take step by step. I had my first child, or I got pregnant when I just started my PhD, but it didn't. Of course, it has its own challenges and difficulties, but because you love your job and you love what you want to do and what you create, then it doesn't hold you back from creating the family and taking care of your child. And then I had the second child when I was just about to found Zana, so my company. So, and this didn't hold me back again. Instead, I wasn't hesitant. I was very positive and optimistic. And then also take it one step at a time. Don't think that the overall, wow, it's going to be so difficult, but because in the end, you don't compromise and you don't risk that, because you love your job and you'll always go back to that, and it doesn't compromise.
Okay, and finally, Professor McHardy, well, since we are already more or less in the wrap-up, you can also choose to just address the audience maybe with a general piece of advice, if you like what would be your number one takeaway message to our audience of young and eager female and male data scientists?
I think a lot of good points have been made. So yeah, try it out, trust yourself. And as my other colleagues have said, like if you find the thing you're passionate about it, like that's the key thing. If you're having fun with it, and voice also that what you need, your needs to be successful. Then the more people say what they need, the more we will be heard, right? So I hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you so much. I think that was a very nice closing message. I think we could go on and on for hours discussing the various exciting aspects of this very broad topic and very general discussion, of course, that touches upon so many fields and is of such high societal relevance. But for now, I'm afraid we need to wrap it up. So half an hour really flew by. I would like to thank the panelists, Professor Attinger, Professor McHardy, and Dr. Hoxha. Thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your career advice with us today. So I hope you have an exciting rest of the afternoon and enjoy the rest of the HIDA Career Day.